very interesting outliers. Kunming is located and connected to the Southeast Asia corridor. As a matter of fact, there is a massive World Bank and IMF investment program going on to build a rail connection through Vietnam, Laos, into Malaysia and Singapore, and connecting to Kunming in China. One of the largest investors in Southeast Asia right now, in Cambodia specifically, as a foreign investor, is China. This is where China will be investing its external, cross-border, trans-border flow patterns. It has its regular flow patterns, but it's now building alternatives. And it's investing in low-cost countries, no different from any Western group. Cambodia has land. It's all about land. It's all about moving goods to the coast. It's not about resources. It's not about stuff. It's about land. And all of these countries, except Malaysia, have cheap labor. You think with all the people working or needing to work in China, why would they do that? Well, China, even they themselves know that it's expensive labor in China now. They have to find an alternative way to pay its people, which in itself is interesting. The other one is Urumqi. Now, for those who don't know Urumqi, and why would you? It's in the autonomous Uyghur region. Now, Uyghur is not a nice word. This is Muslim China, and there is a massive Muslim China. It's right there. And Muslim China is where they're putting in a significant amount of investment in order to recreate something that we're all familiar with from history, and it's called the Silk Road, except they're using rail, not camels. Because the objective is to cross the border into the Kazakhstans, the Uzbekistans, and all of those stands, including the Ukraine, to move goods out of China into Europe overland. That is their next route. I have a question just to get you to think about. Why do you think Tibet is so important? By the way, I mentioned there are 18. Actually, there are 19 logistics centers. Lhasa is the 19th. It's not on the map. It's interesting what's not on the map. What I love about China is not what is said, it's what is not said that is just as important. So why do you think Tibet's important to China? It's not because of religion. Take my word for it. It's not because of territory. I'm sorry? Actually, Lhasa is in here. There it is, right there. It's kind of difficult. By the way, that's the new rail line from that takes you all the way from Beijing to Lhasa in 3 days with the oxygen tanks. You can't go any farther. The mountains are too high. Well, why? Why Tibet? What is it about? It's a resource issue. What is it that you think that they will find in Tibet that they can't find anywhere else because they've destroyed so much of their own environment? Got it. It's all about water. Snow. They want water because the desert up here has been growing and growing and growing, and they need water. And the prediction is, from a lot of thinkers, the next war is going to be over resources and specifically water. So keep that one in mind. Because of the mountains. It's too difficult, too far away. And beside, guess who also rides the rails? The People's Liberation Army. One thing to keep in mind, as these things happen, and you read in the news that there are terrorists in Urumqi who are, commandeering planes, or that there's a policeman who was stabbed to death in Kunming. All right, somebody went berserk and attacked all kinds of policemen while they were doing their PT in the morning, and that there were riots here in Lhasa. Often enough, it's not about conquest; it's about culturalism. It's about culture. The way the Chinese work this out, This is a different culture here in Kunming. It's a Min culture. It's a totally different language, totally different culture. It's the Han Chinese, which is Beijing Chinese, that are now relocating into Kunming and taking over all of the businesses. It's the Han Chinese, who are not obviously Muslims, who are moving into Urumqi to take over. And so you hear of all the unrest, social, political unrest as a result of economic planning and development. All right? It's not just isolated incidents. And so just to validate or verify what I was saying about the Silk Road, this is a map not done by the Chinese, but done by the Ukrainians with Chinese language. And it's their perspective on how things are going to move from China all the way up, and it doesn't show, up into places like Hamburg. Now, all of this sounds great and fantastic. Isn't that nice? Aren't we happy for the Chinese? So what does it have to do with us? Well, the Chinese want to, and I'll even go so far as to say need to, maintain and enhance, and from their point of view, control an economic connection to North America. The collapse of the American economy will be a greater disaster to China than shoring it up. Not only because it's there, not only because they own most of the debt and the value of the money, but because that is its primary market. All right? So the Chinese are not out to destroy the American economy or even to take it over. They want to make sure it continues. And by the American economy, they mean NAFTA economy because it includes us. And so this relationship will never disappear. It may change, but it will never disappear. But one of the things the Chinese will not tolerate is anything that interferes with their ability to succeed, period. All right? They'll tolerate it once, but they won't tolerate it again. So what does that mean? Here in North America, we face gridlock issues, especially on the West Coast ports. Getting goods in to the same volume that China produces and exports, getting it into the United States is a difficulty. The West Coast ports of the United States can't handle the volume. It has nothing to do with strikes, has nothing to do with anything else other than it's a volume issue. The gates are too narrow to get the goods into final markets. So what is China doing? It's going to find ways to get around that barrier, and this is where we come in. The Chinese are interested in something called the North American Free Trade corridors, and there are several of them. And it's about the connectivity that potentially exists from Mexico all the way up through Canada and especially into the United States. And this is a map of several such corridors. We're only going to focus on one because it's the one that's the closest to what's going on in our own country. And that's this one, CISCOR, or NASCO, as they say. And if you notice the pattern, it's about the flow patterns among the three countries, excluding points of entry in the west coast of the United States, but including points of entry in Mexico and in Canada. And this is what the Chinese are looking for. This is the Mexican